these heroes back in time a couple of times already. So while you say that the first film itself is a perfect temporal loop, which I agree, okay, because they've done that, it changed things to make Terminator 2 happen, right? And because they sent Terminators back in Terminator 2, it changed things again. So we're slowly... their own actions are pushing and changing reality, and that's what I'm seeing in this movie. And that's why, to me, having Judgment Day actually happen at the end of this film works for me, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's spiraling out of control because they're changing the past. Everything they've done has changed the past every single time. They go back the first time, they kill people who shouldn't have died because they're going back in time to kill Sarah Connor.
I disagree about that, because I feel like the first movie, like, that always happened.
Yes, I know you do. I know that you do. But
and
for
even the second one doesn't change anything. It doesn't change any dates about the Terminator. Like, I think the second one is still in line with the first one. But I think a big issue here, is it's easy to make the divide. Well, James Cameron directed these, and these are everything after him. So that makes it harder to draw the straight line between them for me that you seem to be doing.
Yeah, see, it totally works for me that it's just something that's completely spiraling out of control now because they're altering time. So that's my defense of it, and I like it. I think it works really well for me. I love it. Mike, what do you think about that?
I mean, I'm not necessarily sure that the time travel in the first two movies works perfectly well either.
I don't believe in time travel, and I don't believe in I'll just put that caveat because we discussed this already. I don't believe in predestination paradoxes because I believe time is linear. So I don't know, like, that's one of the hard things about time travel movies, especially predestination paradoxes. I don't think they're possible, but anyways, sorry.
Yeah, so with this one, I mean, yeah, I would say it works less, but that's not really what bothers me so much as the thematic stuff, the thematic changes.
So you like the hope of the first two that they can overcome it?
I like that, and I like the idea of destiny not being a thing. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of people being able to create change, and I don't like the idea of, well, it's going to happen, so, what can you do? I mean, why even bother trying? I mean, that's like a huge problem with society, right? So, I mean, it's a dangerous thing. It's something that, whatever. It's something that a lot of people believe, and, it makes a lot of things worse. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah, see, to me, the message that I'm getting is not that they can't change it. While Judgment Day is inevitable, it is being changed because it's happening at different times. It's been postponed now, right? It's been postponed a couple of years. It's happening at a different time. To me, the story here and the hopeful message in this is that John Connor is the hero that they're all fighting for. And that's the problem that I have with this movie, is because I don't like Nick Stahl. Right? So it's tough for me because I like the movie a lot, but I really think that Nick Stahl is miscast in this role quite a bit. I'm familiar with him from Carnival, and I think he's fantastic in Carnival, but I really don't like him in this movie, and I don't really like what they've done with John Connor's character in this, and that he's, like, kind of pathetic in this.
Yeah, okay, I was going to ask you about that. I think there are interesting ideas here, like when he's talking to her in the back of the truck. Like, imagine that you were going to do an important thing, maybe the most important thing anyone's ever done. But in order to do that, something horrible has to happen, right? So that's an interesting way. And then for him to... And then interesting, like, they didn't go anywhere with the potential, but, like, this is a guy who was told he was the savior of humanity. But then they stopped that, so now he's no one. He's nothing. It doesn't matter. Like, that's kind of an interesting thing to play with, too, But they really don't go very deep with that. Nick Stahl, I mean, he's fine. I mean, he's not Edward Furlong. I hate recasting. But it is a little... You can suspend your disbelief more because he was a kid and now he's an adult. And I don't know. I just would have thought after the events of Terminator 2, he would have been a little more, like, put together and more hardcore than just like a kind of a loser drifter. which is what they decided to go with in this film.
I buy that, though, because of what you just said. He's been pumped up his whole life. He was fed it from the cradle, as he says in this movie, that he's this hero of humanity. And then Judgment Day comes and goes from the date that he thought it was, and he doesn't know what to do, right? So I kind of like the idea that he stays off the grid because he doesn't know what to do.
He truly can't. He can't. He really doesn't know how to handle the fact that it didn't happen. So he's just in case.
Yeah, just in case. Yeah. So it's almost a little contradiction with the character in that it's like, if I don't know what to do, well, then what does it matter if he's on the grid or not?
Right.
But I also like that for the setup of the movie, with the Terminator coming back to kill all of the lieutenants, because they don't know where he is because he's off the grid.
No, that was clever. I like that. Also, big continuity problem, right? At the beginning of the opening credits, when he's narrating, right? He's like, when I was 13, they tried to kill me. It's like, no, that would have been 1997, and Terminator 2 happened in 1994 or 5, because John was 10. And I mean, he wasn't acting like a 10-year-old, but if you do the math, he was 10 years old in Terminator 2. So, continuity problem.
There is a date in Terminator 2. I forget what it is, but there is a date, a specific date. I don't know what it is.
91.
No, it wasn't 91. Yeah.
So I like that. I like the initial premise of this movie. I think it's spot on, and it's great because, again, it's how are they going to make it different? They tried to kill Sarah Connor. They tried to kill John Connor. How can we make this different but the same? They're going to try and kill his lieutenant so that he doesn't have a force. Because if all he is alone, he's not going to be able to stop Skynet and the machines.
Well, it's inevitable, Brandon.
Well, but again, so because they keep changing the past, it's spiraling out of control and getting farther and farther away. So it's not inevitable because things are changing. Certain things are lining up, right? But I don't think it is inevitable. And I think that if these things continue to spiral out of control, everything will be unrecognizable by the time they get there.
But they flat out say it's inevitable.
Yeah, I know they do. That's fine. That's not how I'm reading it. That's not how I'm interpreting it.
Let me ask all this, Mike. Let's start with you. Do you feel like this would have been a stronger film with Linda Hamilton coming back as Sarah Connor? Do you miss her in this film?
I mean, it would be cool to see her come back. I mean, like, when I see her in the trailer for the new movie, I'm like, oh, yeah. I mean, when you say, like, there's going to be a Terminator show and it's going to be called the Sarah Connor Chronicles, I'm like, this is excellent. But, I mean, in this particular story, would it be better with her in it or without? I mean, it depends on what they were going to use her for,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Like, I do miss her by not having her because I like Sarah Connor as a character, but in this story, I don't believe she's a necessity for this story that they've told, right?
Well,
so there's no place for her in this story.
There's just a lot working here that disconnects it from the first two. They just too much there's not enough connective tissue between this and the first two. It looks like Jonathan Mostow, decent director, right? I mean, he did some good action stuff in here, but he's no James Cameron. I mean, the movie looks, cheaper or just less cinematic than the first two films. Even a whole different look to it.
Okay, so he had to finance this on the down low because he was having trouble getting people to finance the movie, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't until the movie was basically completed that he was able to get distributors, right? And he filmed an alternate ending because he was worried that the ending was too dark, but he actually never had it developed because he didn't want to tell people that he had a safer ending filmed, right? He wanted the darker ending. As the director of this movie, he wanted to have this darker ending, and he thought it was a brave choice. And I kind of do, too. Like, for a Hollywood movie, to have a downer ending like that is kind of interesting.
I give him credit there. I think the ending is one of the strongest parts of the film. Like, oh, wow, Judgment Day. I'm like, that's a pretty ballsy thing to do, to destroy the Earth at the end at the end of your film, right? So good on him for that. But I just feel like all those other directors they were talking about, Ridley Scott, Ang Lee, John McTiernan, I mean, like, I would have loved to see any of those guys' takes on Terminator.
I mean, I put Mostow ahead of Ang Lee, but
that's true. I mean, he did make Hulk, so let's be fair. Instead, so you're right.
What else has Mostow done?
He did U-571 and Breakdown.
Mm-hmm. I love Breakdown. Yeah, he did talk about Breakdown quite a bit in the behind the scenes.
And I think he's just a workman, serviceable, solid director. But James Cameron is a visionary, and so once you just go, the bar was so high. everything was working against this movie, unfortunately, in that respect. Because you just had Arnold, you had no Sarah Connor, no Nolan Hamilton, no Edward Furlong. You know, the T-1000 was like the best villain of all time. You know, one of the best villains of all time. And the TX here is like tries to be cooler, more powerful, but it's like less effective than the T-1000. It's like let's make him, but with an endoskeleton and as a woman. It's
You're not going to find anyone who can replace Cameron. I mean, it's just not. You can't. It's not possible. That's why. You know, every time I see the trailer for that new movie, I get goosebumps, and the part that gives me goosebumps is not anything in the trailer. It's a title card, which I think is pretty brilliant, which says James Cameron Returns. You know? I mean, like, that right there is why I'm excited about this new movie. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you get, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson to direct it. I mean, that would be pretty awesome. I'd definitely be down with that. I would be down with seeing how that turned out. But he's not the guy who created this franchise, you know, and he's not James Cameron. So it doesn't matter who you get.
It's tough because you judge the movie for what it's not, right? Because it could have been all these things, but then it's like, but then even what it is flawed as well. So it's fighting a battle on two fronts.
It's not a perfect movie by any means. There's a couple of things that I think are missteps in it. Like I think Nick Stahl is a really big misstep, and that's a big part that takes away a full star for me because he's such a big part of this movie. Like when we talked about Godfather 3, I said our friend Tristan Riddell gives Godfather 3 4.5, and the only reason he takes a half star away is for Sofia Coppola. She doesn't bother me that much, but she's also not as big a role in The Godfather 3 as Nick Stahl is in Terminator 3, right? So, I don't know, like, that's a really big misstep for me. I don't think Kristanna Loken is that good an actress. She doesn't quite work for me as the Terminator, as the TX, right? But, I don't know, she's fine, I guess. It's just she's not Robert Patrick, true, but I don't know. I don't think she's quite right for it. And I know that they loved her. Like Mostow just sings her praises in it. She's just a little off for me. I can't quite put my finger on it. What's not quite right about her?
You know, I think Robert Patrick, he's a tough act to follow, but I think she did a fine job. You know, for what she's asked to do, I think she did a real good job of being the emotionless killer and all that. But if there's one scene that was really like, what were you thinking? Like, as an actress and the director, was the scene where she licks John Connor's blood and she has a very physical reaction to it, which is like, what?
I think that's fantastic myself. I think that's great because she's not expecting that, right? I don't know. Okay, so that works. That works for me because it's something that she's not expecting. She's not expecting to find John Connor. She's on a mission for this, and that's the primary target. And it's almost like that's the ultimate desire of the Terminators is to get rid of John Connor, right? And so for her to be able to find it and have a chance at it is exciting. I don't know. I like that because while these Terminators are like machines and whatnot, right? It's almost like they could develop, they can have personality, there could be subroutines and whatnot, just like Data, right? Like they say Data doesn't have emotions, but he does. So, I don't know.
What did you think of the TX, Mike?
I thought it was fine. I mean, it is kind of hard to find a way to top what you were doing and saying like, oh, well, it's both, It's the endoskeleton and the morphing thing. That's a little weird because it does seem sort of like regressing in a sense,
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, I think it's fine. Yeah.
So let's jump to what you said, Zach. You don't like about it, but I like is the comedy. Zach, let's talk about the comedy here. Why don't you like the comedy in this movie?
Well, it's so forced and it's unnecessary. Like the Terminator himself. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger's the T-850, he can be put in situations where he's not the butt of jokes. It's just amusing to see, as we saw in most of Terminator 2. But we have him like putting on Elton John sunglasses here, getting shot in the face. Don't do that. Silly stuff like that. I just like why are we forcing this comedy in here? I was not a fan of that. It just because it undercuts a lot of the tension and But I don't know. It's a tough balance to have, but the second film especially found a great balance of the comedy and the action and the